way. It's very contemporary in some ways and very much old school. So Robert Hayden said, a poet now whose work and dedication to a demanding and difficult art I admire. And if you don't know who he is, Robert Hayden, look him up on your iPhone. A man who has the gift of inner grace. This is really some cool stuff, I have to say. And I'm not just saying that just to say it. It really is. And when you hear some of his epic poetry and poetry, hopefully you'll agree and want to grab a copy of this. This book is the Parliament of Poets. And if you've done any studying of classic epic poetry, this fits the bill. And don't let that turn you away. It's really good stuff. Please welcome Frederick Glacier. Frederick!
Thank you, ML, for that fine introduction and invitation.
Let us know if it's loud.
Can you hear me here? And invitation to read here and participate with everyone. Really appreciate it. Let's slip this over. I'm going to read from my first book of poems, lyric poems, Into the Ruins, and then an excerpt from my epic poem, The Parliament of Poets. And can you hear me well out there all right?
Better.
As long as I stay this close?
I'm going to try to turn it.
All right. So, Into the Ruins, as I think of it, in terms of the title and so forth, is Into the Ruins of the 20th Century. The title poem is a series of 5 lyric poems, sort of bookended with the collapse in Lebanon in the 1980s, 1982, various upheavals that took place there. And start there with poem number 1. Smoke curls above the ruins of Lebanon that smother the bodies of those who had hoped for peace. Behind broken walls, broken men and women seek refuge from a fury that stalks them as relentlessly as destiny. I lie in bed looking into the dark and see nothing but the vaguest fancies mankind has ever dreamt. Somewhere behind a broken wall, something begins to move to assume a shape met somewhere once before. Out from the ruins he steps and stands amid the scintillating dark, waiting quietly. 2. Fire and smoke in another street in another time, the Black Sea and the blackness of Trebizond, churches burning, houses seized, women married to their children's murderers, and the marching of thousands, hundreds of thousands to their death in the desert, stabbed along the road, shot in the back, dragged into the hills and raped to death, kicked from a bridge into the Euphrates, none finding it good to cross over, all dying of hunger and thirst in Aleppo. From the shadows we watch the efficiency of the formidable modern state, of the Committee of Union and Progress. 3. Coiling, swirling, swaying above our heads, smoke and the stench of human flesh burst from the hellhole of Auschwitz. In the ghastly glow, the demons weave their macabre and haunting dance around the flaming pit. And like horrible, gigantic flares, every chimney in the yard vomits fire tainted with human ash. Through the fence of the crematory, we watch leaping figures, silhouettes against the flames, turn corpses with pitchforks, pour fuel on people who still writhe with the pain of life.
There's a lot of newbies here. Just cheer like hell after this. You might not know that. That's how we do it.
4. 8:15, a clear day, transmogrified into an inferno, into smoke and ash. Along the road he stands, his eyeball in his hand, gazing in horror. And everywhere we walk, others struggle and squirm and shudder, arms bent forward, skin blackened and peeling from their bones, kimono patterns burnt deep into their flesh. Human specters of human wrong everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Nightmare people staggering in darkness.
Yeah.
5. Seen through smoke, past 5-month-old rotting bodies, Muslim militiamen brandish from a jeep jawless Christian skulls on cudgels, wave them with glee to taunt those who butchered old women and children, now dried to ash by the Lebanese sun. We move past withered remains and out of the broken building. And those sockets that once knew life, that saw the one sun rise and set, stare back. I stumbled down the hill as one lost in blindness stumbles through darkness. Among the outstanding accomplishments of Eleanor Roosevelt was her presiding over the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. A eulogy, Eleanor Roosevelt. Thousands wrote, amended, quibbled over wording and content, upheld the traditions of East and West, of Aquinas and Confucius, defended individual and social rights. She was not alone, but she alone had the vision, the drive, the determination to create out of lesser loyalties the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Magna Carta of all mankind. And I cannot read in Detroit without reading a poem for my dear friend, Elegy for Robert Hayden. Blue jays scream in the trees. Winter's late snow begins to fall. All nature seems to grieve for you. Yet I know it is only I and others who also disbelieve the feared and all too sudden change that has left us with nothing but the delayed and swirling gusts of winter snow. And even they will soon be gone. The last lyric poem I'm going to read here is titled Kagi. Kagi is Japanese, means the key. I lived there for a few years when young in the 1980s, and this is partly based on an experience I had there. Kagi. Halfway to Tokyo at a little side station, I sit down to await the next train. From around a corner of the building, a 6-year-old boy hastens up to me, asks in his childish voice for help. I follow him to a worn-out bicycle, his mother gasping as I approach, smile, kneel to inspect the front key and wheel lock. The boy crouches to look intently with me. I jiggle and bang the bent and stuck key until it snaps free. We all cheer. Thanking me, the woman whisks him into the carrier. I assure her it was nothing. As the mother pedals off, the child, hair tousled, turns round smiling and waves and waves and waves. All right, so this I'm going to read from my epic poem, give you a brief idea of the plot outline in a sense. Set partly on the moon at the Apollo 11 landing site, the Sea of Tranquility, Apollo calls all poets of the nations, ancient and modern, East and West, to assemble on the moon to consult on the meaning of modernity. The Parliament of Poets sends the persona on a journey to the 7 continents to learn from all the spiritual and wisdom traditions of humankind. On Earth and on the moon, the poets teach him a new global universal vision of life. From the very beginning of Book 1, on the moon, the persona speaking. In the mid part of the moon, I stood in the midst of the sea of tranquility, looking around me from rim to curving rim. The brilliant moonscape against the blackest black of space, stark blackness, polarities of light and night, where a human footstep marked a giant leap forward in lunar dust for all mankind. Footsteps still all about. Undisturbed, untouched by decades of time, destined to remain for all time. Eternity, or as near to it as we can imagine, unlike what Robinson Crusoe found, an ephemeral footprint on a beach. Here, with instruments and a flag unfurled in the solar wind, half a lunar module, the descent platform left far behind, the glory of the moon and all creation. And then I saw him sitting on his nag, Rosinante, Don Quixote, a lance resting across his saddle as he leaned forward from next to a crater, gazing my way. At first, shock overwhelmed me, finding myself where I was, disoriented, disbelieving. How could it be? I stood there without an encumbering spacesuit, lightly clad in my old corduroy jacket, worn beyond its prime, breathing in the atmosphere of the moon. The man of La Mancha plodded slowly on his nag, even as I began to realize we were not alone. A crowd of people were coming toward me too. How could they have gotten here as well, I wondered. My own presence in Cervantes, still a mystery, unexplained. Beyond belief, amazement, deeply stirring, shaking my very being as I recalled my flight to the moon. A creaking leather saddle woke me further to his nearness as he leaned closer to me, looking annoyed, eyeing me from his mount. So you finally made it up here. What's taken you so long? Don't give me any of your excuses. We've all been waiting for you. Here they come. Snap out of it and collect your wits. At the head of a throng of people massing across the sea of tranquility, I began to discern other old friends, long known but never met face to face. Only in ink, the printer's art, or used to be. In the front of the crowd, drawing near, I saw Du Fu wrapped in Confucian reserve and robe, exiled, forcing to wander and beg, seeking food, crumbs at the door of the great, hoping for an appointment from the emperor, dreaming of a great man who would bring down the river of heaven to wash away all the blood of weapons never to be used again. Flowing behind him, his robe stirred up the moon dust like a mist about his feet, standing still a distance away, saying with elevated dignity, "You who have been to Chang'an, welcome to the moon." Next to him stood Li Po, friend and fellow poet. Bai Jui followed both, a voice for the people, daring to speak of injustice to the emperor, his fame reaching all the way to distant lands, far to the east, Korea and Japan. A lay Buddhist of the fragrant mountain. The scent of the same fragrance came from the Japanese poets next to him. Basho, like a monk, but the dust of the world upon him. Saigyo, a monk who left his military clan. Zeami, playwright of the court, whose plays lay bare his time, cutting through to another realm like a samurai sword. Milarepa, the Tibetan poet, clad in cotton, wrapped in selfless practice, detached but from Buddha's teaching of Dharma. Another fragrance too, rose petals and poppies, attar and rumi, the journey of the hupu to the samorg, the beloved, delirious, whirling in a vortex of longing, and Naguib Mahfouz, wearing a cravat. They and many other poets flowed into the landing site. Samuel Johnson and Thomas Gray, Henry Vaughan and George Herbert, Dryden, Shakespeare and Marlowe, Ben beside them, jostling and pushing forward Shelley and John Keats, William Wordsworth, Longfellow, Robert Burns looking ready still to raise a pint for old Lang Syne, his mountain daisy and rose. While Welsh bards stood on a rock with Taliesin, spreading out around space junk left behind, between and among the old instruments, the hardware of Tranquility Base. I could see now poets of the book, Job of tested patience, long-suffering, Dante, the man who had been to hell, Milton, who justified the ways of God, song of the conquering evolution of the soul, the battle of good and evil, choosing through free will God's holy gift. Rumi's Indian brother, reincarnated Kabir, weaver of a Muslim Hindu cloth. Warp and woof of the one, free of duality. Vyasa, Kalidasa, and Tagore all had come from their ashrams to the moon. And standing nearby, Senliki Unini, O moon god, hear my prayer, who entered into the spirit of he who saw the deep, out of the libraries of Babylon, Sumer, raised the song of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, their journey through Mesopotamia. And from every land and clime, all around they stood, poets of every continent, jostling for a sight of the poet from earth, ahead of his time, new arrival, not yet translated to the spirit of the universe. African poets and shamans, griots of ancient songs, singers of rituals, nobly held their instruments and flutes, and calabashes, drums, ready to play as though Bala Haseki were about to step forward to sing the tale of Sogalan's son, Sunyata, unifier of Mali and much of the Africa of his day. Aimé Césaire saluting Africa, Leopold Sédar Senghor, the widening world. In Moonglow, Christopher Okigbo, naked before Mother Idato. And from the Americas too were tellers of tales, Hopi and Navajo, Lakota, Odawa, Iroquois, Mohican, American tribes beyond telling, Incan and Aztec, Aborigines of Australia, drums and didgeridoos, island peoples. All stood quietly on the moon, watching, pressing to see this most curious of sights, a supposed white man from the suburbs not long from morning prayers, plunked down on the moon. Together, Merlin and Queen Mab stood before the crowd, he holding out his staff, she clothed in nature's bountiful plenty, catching the eye of many a poet and seer. Speaking the thought of many present, addressing Cervantes, Merlin asked, "What is this embodied spirit doing here amongst us, disturbing the serenity of our home? How can this be? Is this one of your quixotic jokes? Did you bring him here, and what's the point?" Cervantes leaned back slightly in the saddle, Rosante snortling, giving her head a little shake, her mangy mane taking a while to resettle in low gravity. All eyes moved from Merlin to Cervantes, who replied, once peace and quiet had resumed, though how and why the heavenly realm that poets have occupied from time immemorial could be compromised still seemed to hang upon the lips of many, glared from their eyes full of curiosity. Cervantes, cocking back his head with authority, swept his eyes over the assembly of poets. The pressing multitude began. "We have all experienced the loss of the living presence in modern times. Even those who would go backward show loss. Our people all lose their way, bewildered, science usurping the glory of the moon. Our domain, where most of us dwell even now, Just look around at all the trash the astronauts and scientists left behind, scattered about the beauty of this plain. All man's science and technology cannot understand the moon, mighty symbol of eons, visible sign, uplifting men's eyes to the heavens. You all know I speak the truth. Many of our people and even some of us cling to nostalgia, but it's not the same as that deep experience of the divine. Lifting his lance into the air, waving it about, Rosinante leaping apace, raising her forelegs, Cervantes exclaimed, "Obeying Lord Apollo, I challenge you, I call here a parliament of poets."
Wow. Frederick Glaser. You can read that book for years and years, and it keeps giving. That's incredible. You know, the classics, or, you know, some of them, classic poetry and so forth.